So I'm really excited. About 5 years ago, I came to an event here at the board, and it was California compliance, and it was all about disclosures and disclosing and how important that is. And it has stuck with me all this time, and I've been so excited to get Mailana back. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Mailana with Property ID. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Summer. And I'm not happy about having to speak into a mic. I don't like mics. I have an ex-husband named Mike, so I avoid mics. Okay. I have ADD and dyslexia, so I need to walk and talk and use my hands, and so I'll do my best. Yeah, mobile mic is worse than stationary. Okay. The mobile mic. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. So that was just boo, lawsuits coming up all over. Okay. Thank you very much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. My beautiful friend Kathy brought me some Greek treats, some baklava. No, I will not be sharing. I'm very sorry. Okay, thank you, Kathy. So where shall we begin? I guess we should begin at the beginning. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, called Sacramento, the state of California decided that sellers are legally required to make these disclosures, some of which they know and they are able to, and that would be on the real estate transfer disclosure statement. Some disclosures they decided, however, also need to be made by the seller, and usually a seller doesn't even know. Raise your hand if you know if you are in a liquefaction zone. Raise your hand. What? Thank you, my Habibi friend. Yes. Okay, so you are all far more familiar with what a liquefaction zone is than a typical seller. And yet the law requires that seller make this disclosure to any prospective buyer. You know this. This is nothing new. But here is the kicker. When seller is representing self, seller has the legal obligation to make this disclosure. So what is this? This is California Civil Code Section 1103. This is just a portion of it. It just repeats this same thing 6 times. What does it say? So when the seller is representing self, seller has to make the disclosure. But when seller is represented by an agent, look at that. The seller's agent bears the burden of making these disclosures. That's on you, boo, right? It's on you. A seller's agent. So it doesn't say escrow officer there. It doesn't say transaction coordinator. It doesn't say your mother-in-law or your broker, okay? It's on you. A seller's agent for a seller of real property shall. That's the highest directive in the law, right? It's not as high as thou shalt not kill, but it's pretty darn close. Shall. Aha, here is where everybody gets a little confused. To any prospective buyer. That is not the one buyer you are in contract with. That is anybody who might want to buy the property. That means people sitting at home in their jammies inspecting on the internet, looking. That's a prospective buyer. Any prospective buyer. So raise your hand if you know the answer to this question. Should an escrow officer order the natural hazard disclosure statement 2 days before the close of escrow? Summer. No, no. And why is this so important? I had a realtor call me crying. She was sobbing on the phone. And she explained this to me, and I will explain it to you as she explained it to me. She said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sad." I said, "What happened?" She said, "Well, I had this $5 million listing in Alamo. Alamo, if you know, it's right by Walnut Creek. It's on the East Bay." She said, "We were getting real close to closing. And, I never order the natural hazard disclosure report because I work with this one escrow officer and she's so lovely. She orders it for me all the time. But this time the buyer wanted some other company. And so there was a different escrow officer and she did not order the natural hazard disclosure report. And I was not expecting that. And so about a week before we were scheduled to close, the buyer was getting some cold feet. And I said, we're closing in a week. Too bad for you. All the contingencies have been removed. Sorry, boo." And then the buyer's agent emailed me and said, "I was looking at all the disclosures and it doesn't seem like we have the natural hazard disclosure report in the file." She said, "So I hurried and I sent over, I ordered a property ID, I sent it over, and lo and behold, the buyer came back and said, 'Oh, boo. This property is not in a flood zone, but darn it, I would like to be.'" Right? Yeah. So the reason for this, the way it's written in the law, is so that you don't have that horrible experience. Oh, and by the way, the seller fired her. Okay, boo. So you want to make sure that you get the natural hazard disclosures into the buyer's hands immediately. And you need to do this at the time of listing. So the way I know that many realtors do this is they get the listing, they order the natural hazard disclosure report, they upload it to the MLS. "Hey, buyers, return the disclosures signed with your offers." And you eliminate the 5-day right to terminate the contract. Done. Not there, not an option anymore. This comes with a 5-day right to terminate the contract. So get it good at the beginning. All right. It also requires that you exercise good faith in the selection of a third-party report provider. Good faith. What is good faith? Good faith is the highest standard of honesty, right? That means that you need to get for your client what you would want to get if you were the buyer of this property. That's good faith. Is it good faith to choose a disclosure report because they sponsored breakfast today? No. Is it good faith to choose a service because they bring you a cookie for Halloween? Absolutely not. So it's very important to understand that you need to exercise good faith, meaning you need to choose for your clients what you personally would want to choose if you were the purchaser of this property. So I'm going to share with you that I am not a fan of social media. It's just not for me. I know some people love it. I mean, you get to connect with your family all around the world. I don't care about them. No, I'm kidding. No. I don't want to see their ugly kids. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's so rude, sort of. Anyway, I'm sharing this with you because In the event that you try to friend me on this or that, you will never hear back from me. So just know that it's not because I don't like you. It's because I don't like social media. There is one place I do check periodically from time to time when I feel the need to scare my pants off, and that place is called Nextdoor. Have you heard of that? Horrible place. So I do check it once in a while. And I checked it and I was reading it. And this lady that had just moved into my neighborhood, she posted, "Hey, everybody, I'm new in the neighborhood. And everything was all good and fine before I bought my house. But now, oh, there's a crack developing in my dining room and the floors in my foyer are sloping. So I'm putting this out there for y'all because you know the neighborhood so much better than I do. Is this common in our neighborhood? Is this because of all the rain we had after 6 years of drought, or is this just me?" So I was reading this and I was like, "Oh, honey, that's just you." But another lady in my neighborhood, my neighbor, Carolyn. Carolyn is my neighbor who knows where all the missing cats went. Carolyn is my neighbor who posts photographs of license plates of the speeding teenagers. That is Carolyn. Let me share with you. Oh my gosh, I got all messed up here. Where is my Carolyn? Where is she? No, I lost it. Oh, here we go. No, yeah, no, it's no, her name is Carolyn. It's not Karen, but you know, it's close. So this is what my neighbor Carolyn replied to our brand new neighbor. Veronica, can you read it out loud? Scream it. Yeah.
I would go after the seller, but go hard on the realtor. The realtor is the expert and should have made sure this was disclosed.
You see that? This is what they say. Okay, this is what they say. There was a time when the only person you had to worry about was the person who lives right across the street from the buyer, or the person who lives right next door, coming with cookies and saying, "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Hey, did they get rid of all the rats in that house? Oh yeah, there were so many rats. Oh, they didn't tell you? Oh, you know, they were supposed to tell you that." Well, now, thanks to this horrible place called Nextdoor, now you have thousands of Carolyns giving your buyers free legal advice. So ultimately, remember this: buyers don't read anything. They say they do, but they don't. Buyers are liars. They don't read a thing. And from my experience, what I'm seeing, because I'm up and down the state of California all the time, I see that there's a lot of micro markets. Is that something that you guys say, or is it something that I came up with on my own? Micro markets. Okay, so in some neighborhoods, the sellers are getting 10 offers, right? In other neighborhoods, the sellers are having to decrease their prices, right? So I don't know what you call that. What do you call that? What's the technical term? Micro markets. I like that word. Micro markets. It sounds fun. Anyway, so that's what I'm seeing. Depending on where I go, this is what the realtors tell me, that there's different situations happening. Ultimately, the buyers have several options. You know what? I'm going to share this video with you just because it's so darn funny. I hope it comes out. I'm going to share this with you because it's just funny. You may have seen it already, but.
Excuse me. Is that apple for sale? Yeah, we're about to put it on sale right now, actually. Well, I'm in the market, so tell me about your apple. Why should I buy it? Nice try. Okay, people, here's how this is going to work. I have an apple here. The highest bidder's going home with this. I want all bids in the next 2 minutes, then we're closing it. Bidding starts at $5. Feeling pretty confident there, huh? I mean, don't you think? $10. He said starting at 5. 15. Is this a new apple? Yeah, just listed. I'm pre-qualified. I'll pay cash. I got cash. 20. 30. 40. No, just make it 45. Is it even worth that? 50. I don't know. Please, this is the 8th apple I've tried to buy. Could I at least see it up close? Nope, it's an apple. You know what it is. You either want it or you don't. I'll take it for 100. What? I'm from California. It's the cheapest apple I've ever seen. 120. Why did I do that? Why? I don't know.
So, have you seen that video before? No? Okay. I just think that I thought everybody has seen it before. It's so funny. Yeah. Okay. But it's very frightening because it's very real, right? And it shows us that in many cases, buyers are driven completely by emotion. They've lost their marbles, right? And what is the guy who paid $120 for a $4 apple, but $4 apple? I mean, that's expensive. But what does he immediately say? No, what did he say? He said, why'd I do that? Is it even worth that? What is that called? Opa! I would give you my baklava, but I won't. I would like to, I'm thinking about it, right? Good job, Summer. That's called buyer's remorse. And buyer's remorse is a very real thing. And remember this, again, buyers don't read anything. They may skim it in order to sign it and get the keys and get it done, but they don't read it. Very few people read every word. Those are the lawyers and the engineers and the interesting clients of yours, right? The ones you don't want to work with ever again. The ones who want to spend 20 minutes on the phone with me going over every single page of the report. But guess what? They're not going to sue you. They won't sue you because they understand. It's the ones who go like this, click, 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 give me the keys, right? Usually your friends and family. Okay, they're the ones who experience buyer's remorse. So yes, buyers do sue, and you don't know about it. You have no idea, because let me tell you something. Agents don't skip around the grocery store saying, hey, everybody, I'm getting sued. List your house with me. No, they don't show up at the marketing meetings and say, did you hear I'm getting my pantsuit off me? No, they don't talk about it. But in fact, it happens. So what is this? This is a directory of lawsuits, every one of which is natural hazard disclosure related, every single one. This is about 260. Okay, there's more. I'm not done. This is a work in progress. I've been busy. The first, we're not going to go over all 260, don't worry. But we'll go over a couple. The first one on the list, I'm sure you all know. You've read it, you've heard it, you remember it. Here it is. Easton versus Strasburger. Buyers in California are legally entitled to receive all facts that materially affect the value or desirability of the property. What's that? What is that? Desirability. What is that? A buyer can sue for that. What is it? Yes. Yes. Did you say that, Kathy? Θέλω, δεν θέλω in Greek. I want, I don't want. I'm sorry. I just had to throw my Greek in there. Right. I want, I don't want. A buyer can sue for that. Think about that. I'll give you an example. Today for lunch, I will desire fish tacos. I love fish tacos. It's not Tuesday, but I like tacos on Thursday, right? What do y'all desire for lunch? Maybe by the time I actually go to lunch, I might desire pizza, right? Just that's desirability. And a buyer can sue for that. They have a legal right to sue buyers can sue for anything, just so you know. A buyer can sue because they don't want to have sex anymore. It's called loss of consortium. Yeah. I'm not kidding you. You think, look it up. Loss of consortium. Yes, that means I can't have sex anymore. I'm going to sue you for that. It is. So look at this next lawsuit. Pleckley versus Coldwell Banker. Buyer got $1 million for I don't want. There was nothing wrong with the property. There was no damage, nothing. The only thing that happened in this case is that after the close of escrow, the buyer learned that this property was in a local landslide zone. So the buyer came back and said, I never would have desired to buy a property that's in a local landslide zone. Buyer got $1 million for nothing, but I don't want. So let me ask you this question. When it comes to choosing which service the seller has to pay for, what is the seller going to choose? Cheapest. Who said that? Good girl, smarty. I won't give you my baklava, but I'll think about it when I'm eating it. Think about you when I'm eating it. Yes, good girl. The cheapest. That's what the seller wants. The cheapest. What does the buyer want? The buyer wants the least information? Yeah, no, the seller wants the cheapest. The buyer wants the best, right? That's it. Look, think about that. The seller wants the cheapest. The buyer wants the best. Who's the plaintiff in this equation? Who's the one who does the suing? The buyer. So why would you let the seller choose the cheapest, crappiest service when you know buyer wants the best and buyer does the suing? It's so simple. Get the best for your client, for the buyer. Don't open yourself up to getting sued. It's really that simple. Give them the best, and then they won't sue you. It also shows your intent. It also shows your standard of practice. I always choose the best, right? So I'd like to share with you the evolution of a lawsuit, because you may not know how they go. So my friend Habibi asked me if I litigate. I do not. Litigation is tough, scary work, and I do happy, fun work. I get to be with all of you. But I'll share with you the evolution of a lawsuit. So a buyer, moves in and is so happy in their new house, and then notices a dark circle developing on the ceiling in the dining room. What's that? So the buyer calls a roofer, and the roofer comes in and says, well, your roof is defective. It has leaked many times, and it's going to leak again. I can put in a new roof for you for $60,000. Let me check my calendar in April. And the buyer's like, what my defective in April, 60,000? I am not happy about this. Nobody told me that this roof is defective. So of course the buyer's going to jump on Nextdoor, because that's where all her true friends are. And she's going to type it up and say, hey, my neighbors, I'm the one who bought the house at 1313 Mockingbird Lane. And have any of you ever seen a roofer up here before? Who's the first person who's going to reply? Carolyn, yes. I'm going to think about you when I'm eating my baklava. Yes. Carolyn is going to say, oh, yes, honey, I've been living right up the street from you for the past 42 years. Yes, I have seen roofers up there before. In fact, the seller, that jerk, we hated him, and we're so happy he left the neighborhood, all of us. He had a roofer up there right before he listed your house. Yes. And I would go after him if I were you. But go hard on the realtor, because the realtor is the expert and should have made sure this was disclosed to you. Here's the phone number for my son-in-law. He's an excellent attorney, and he won't charge you anything until he wins the case. And he's very good, my daughter says. Right? So the buyer will call Carolyn's son-in-law. And Carolyn's son-in-law will say this. So your little leaky roof doesn't justify my attorney fees. $60,000? I make more than that. So here's what you need to do, buyer. You need to go home and print out every piece of paper of and concerning this property. And I want it in reverse chronological order. So that means I want the roofing quote on the top. I want all the disclosures in the middle. And at the very bottom, I want the advertisement, the MLS listing, whatever it is you saw, the flyer at the bottom. I will build a case for you. And don't worry about your agent, buyer. Your agent has insurance for this purpose. Fantastic. Carolyn's son-in-law will prepare what is called a pre-litigation letter. A pre-litigation letter is basically, 3 to 5 pages of legal mumbo-jumbo, lawyer bully tactics designed to scare your pants off and keep you up at night. They're very effective. Carolyn's son-in-law may also include a draft of a lawsuit with your name on it. And it might say draft right here, right? And in the pre-litigation letter, Carolyn's son-in-law will refer to this lawsuit time and again. You have failed to disclose the fact that this property is close to the ground breaks fault. You have failed to disclose the fact that this property is in a high fire hazard severity zone on 5 different maps. You have failed to disclose the fact that this property is within 500 feet of an oil and gas well. I'm talking faster than my fingers will go. There's the fault, the ground breaks fault. You have failed to disclose the fact that this property is in the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act with a high priority groundwater basin. And most importantly, you have failed to disclose the fact that this property is in a riverine protected by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it's got the slender salamander proposed endangered and the Comanche Point layer, all of which come to damages exceeding the value of this property, none of which the buyer would have desired to have when purchasing a property. If you intend to settle this case, as the sweet, innocent buyer would prefer to settle this dispute amicably and avoid litigation, please contact the undersigned at your earliest convenience, not to exceed 15 days, indicating your intent to settle, and we will not file this lawsuit against you. Very truly yours, Carolyn's son-in-law. So easy. That's what's called a good old-fashioned shakedown. And it's very effective. And you don't even hear about those because they don't get filed. So you want to talk a little bit about additional dwelling units? Is that something big right now here or not? Additional dwelling units. Okay, the casita. So the state of California passed Senate Bills 8, 9, and 10 with the intent to expand housing production in California. Bye, Habibi. Thank you. Marhaba. Anyway, all my Arabic is coming out here. Oh, sorry, Lebanese. Sorry. Okay. So Senate Bills 8, 9, and 10 are intended to expand housing production in the state of California. The problem is that the additional dwelling units are, they're expensive. So you got to have a little bit of cash to be able to construct an additional dwelling unit. They're at least $100,000. It's really difficult to find financing for an additional dwelling unit. And if you plan to rent it, you are legally required to comply with Assembly Bill 646. And that disclosure is legally required to be at the tenant's request in Chinese, Korean, Spanish, Vietnamese, or Tagalog. Did you know that? Yeah, well. And by the way, Property ID does provide that report. It's the renter report. So there are exceptions to your ability to construct an ADU, and they are farmlands, wetlands, flood, fire, fault species. So I have a casita story of my own. I bought a house in the East San Francisco Bay in 2004. And of course, before I even made an offer, I had the property ID report. I knew everything there was to know about this property. I read every word. I knew everything, right? I don't care. The school district was great. The kitchen was fantastic. I bought the house. 10 years later, my father-in-law became very ill. My father-in-law and my mother-in-law were living in Southern California at the time. So we knew he was going to die. So I called my mother-in-law up and I said, hey, we really want you to come and live with us up in the Bay Area. And my mother-in-law said to me, oh, no. My mother-in-law lived with me. She forced herself into my home. It was the worst 45 years of my life. I won't do that to you or me. I said, okay, well, you know, she's a different person. She was completely different than you. But I respect that. So what about this? We have a nice big backyard. What about if I build you a casita in the backyard? That way you can have your own kitchen, your own bathroom, your own TV. You can come and go as you please, but we can keep an eye on each other. What do you say? She said, oh, that's lovely. Yes. I would love to live with you if I have my own space. So I hired an architect. I paid this guy $25,000. He drew my plans. I went into the city and I said, you know, here I am. I want to build my casita. And they said to me this, oh, no, Mailana. See, your property is close to two faults, the Franklin Fault and the Southampton Fault. That's a big problem. Another big problem is the fact that the backyard where you're planning to build your casita, it slopes down. And that's a local landslide zone. But the biggest problem you've got, Mailana, is the fact that you have habitat for the California tiger salamander. We won't let you put a doghouse back there. And don't you touch that salamander, Mailana, they told me. That's a $50,000 fine and a year in jail for you if you do. And I would love to catch one of those little slippery salamanders and make a belt out of it. But, you know, they don't let you wear belts in prison, right? That's where that fashion was originated. Did you know that? That, you know, when the little boys wear their butts out, right? Their pants are low. That's a prison fashion because they can't wear belts. So they have to yeah, no, I'm not kidding. I wish it would go away. I'm tired of seeing their underwear, right? No, I certainly hope not. Okay. So I'm sharing this report with you. I can't go as fast as I'm talking, but let's say I were to come to you and I say, you know, I saw this property on Trina Court in Bakersfield that I'm very interested in having a look. It's in my price range, $1.2 million. Can I look at it? And you say, let's go. So fantastic. We go, we have a look. I'm telling you, hey, you know, I'm really interested in building a casita for my mother-in-law because my father-in-law is about to die. And so what do you think about that? And you say, oh, Mailana, it's perfect. Right there in the backyard, nice big backyard, perfect spot for you to put your mother-in-law's casita. I say, let's go write up the offer right now. Of course, it's accepted. I buy the property. I hire an architect. I pay him $25,000. And the city tells me this. Oh, no, Mailana. So this property is very close to a flood zone, even though it falls right outside. I'll tell you about that in a second. It's in a high fire severity zone on 5 different maps. It's close to the ground breaks fault of 1952. It's close to 2 oil and gas wells, and it's got the threatened riverine protected by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the slender salamander. It's in the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act with a high priority groundwater basin, which means you can't change the water usage, so we will never let you build this casita on your property. So I come back to you and I say, well, wait a minute. Remember we were talking, you and I, you said, well, I can't build my casita. My purpose for purchasing this property is entirely frustrated. So I don't want this house anymore. I want my $1.2 million back plus the $25,000 I paid that architect to draw my plans. But I know how clever you are. You're going to say, but Mailana, in this neighborhood, this old micro market, prices are going up. Let's put your house on the market, make you some money. Yay, that would be the right answer, right? Okay, before I share the very last lawsuit, I do want to share a couple of really important things with you because I'm sure that you don't know. So this is a property ID report. Did you know that you can chat with the Vice President of Client Relations from page 2? This is Sammy. Sammy is not a robot. She's a beautiful, wonderful human being who is ready and willing to chat with you from page 2 of the report. Isn't that amazing? I think it's lovely. And I'll tell you what else I think is lovely. I am allergic to math. I hate numbers. But look at this. We have in here a property tax estimator. So you click on this blue future tax estimator, right? And it will give me right here, the previous assessed value for this property was $991,740, okay? 704. See, my dyslexia kicks in right there. All right, but I love this property so much, I'm going to pay $1.2 million. Okay? And it's very important. You put a purchase price, you put a closing date. I'm going to select my son's birthday, which is this Sunday, and I hit calculate. Look at that. It's going to give me the estimated property taxes, and it's going to give me the supplemental property taxes, and I didn't have to do any math at all. Let me share with you something else. So this is an interesting property because of the fact, look at this. I just want to really quickly touch on that fire stuff. A very high fire hazard severity zone, no. So you think, aha, I don't have to do that horrible form, right? Oh, but yes, you do. Look, not you, your seller. This property is located in a high fire severity zone. Assembly Bill 38 disclosure form is required. So we make it very simple for you. Super simple. Let me share with you the report in Spanish. Sorry, we don't provide it in Lebanese just yet, but if you want to translate, maybe. All right. So here we go. So here it is in Spanish. And tienes preguntas, chat con Sammy aquí, right there. The natural hazard disclosure is in Spanish. You see that? And it does say, don't sign here because the law is written in English. You have to sign on the English version, which is the very next page in English. But as you can see, look at this. It's summarized in Spanish. because people feel more comfortable reading in the language they are most familiar with. And if your Spanish is not as good as your clients, you can always click English there, right? And if you get lost and you're like, where am I in this report? At the very bottom, you can always return to the one-page NHD. So the last lawsuit, and by the way, we have it in Chinese too. Let me just show you, because, you know, there are a lot of Chinese buyers, and yes, they would prefer to read in Chinese. And by the way, we've been doing this for almost 3 years. So take a look. It's very exciting. In Chinese, I'm not that good. Sorry. I only know the dirty words. Nobody wants to hear the dirty words in Chinese. But anyway, so the last lawsuit of the day, Field versus Century 21 Cloden Fornes. So this, the judge ruled in this case, this is really important. When an agent makes a statement, not knowing if the statement is true, the statement is false, and that's fraud. Why is that so important? Last week, I was in an office and the broker said, oh, I tell all my clients this. All of California is in a very high fire hazard severity zone. That is not true. Don't make a statement like that. And I hear this one too all the time. Oh, buyer, don't worry about the ground breaks fault of 1952. All of California is in an earthquake fault zone. That is also not true. Don't make statements like that. This is what I would do. I would email this to the buyer. What does the E in your email stand for, everybody? Oh, that's my girl. Good job. Say it again.
Evidence.
Evidence. Your E in your email is your evidence. Mwah. Right? Buyers will never remember conversations they had with you when they are heavily represented by legal counsel. They will remember the conversations you had with them the way Carolyn's son-in-law tells them to remember it. This is what your agent said, correct? This is how she said it, right? That's how they're going to remember the, yep, that's what she said, right? They will never remember the conversations as you remember them. So it's really important that you email your clients as often as possible, because your email is your evidence. And this is the way I would do it. Hello, my wonderful buyer. And I'll email you. If you give Veronica your email address, don't worry, you're not going to get, hey, your auto insurance is about to expire. No, you'll just get the emails from me. Hello, my wonderful buyer. Attached is the property ID natural hazard disclosure report. Please read it very carefully. If you have any questions about anything in this report, please call property ID. Here is their phone number, 1-800-626-0106. You can chat with a person who is the vice president of the company from page 2. You can email them. Here is Veronica's email address. Here's Mailana's email address. You can email them your question, review it carefully, sign it, and return it to me. That email is evidence of your fiduciary duty. That email is evidence of your intent to provide complete disclosure. It's evidence that you have reminded the buyer, hey, this is really important and you need to read it. They're not going to read it, right? But it's evidence that you told them to. And it's evidence that you have directed them to the people most qualified to explain this report, because it's not you. You did not prepare this report, so don't explain it. Always, the preparer of any document must explain it, not you. So do you guys have any questions? Come on now. Come on. Yes. The flood. Oh, you know what? Yes, that's really important. And I totally agree with you. So, yes, she wants me to talk about the flooding. So I was fortunate enough to be in a presentation with FEMA. That's the other 4-letter F word. FEMA. So this lady here, she was talking about, this stuff. And she was talking and she was talking and she was talking. And the only thing that I could focus on was item number 2. Look at that. Look at what she posted. Quote, water does not read flood maps. Ta-da! Well, Property ID has known this for decades. And in fact, here is, let me just share this one with you because there's so much to talk about on this one. So several years ago, we had contacted several cities throughout the state of California. And we asked them, we're fairly certain that water does not read flood maps. This was before FEMA made their declaration, right? Do you restrict permits when a property is not actually in the special flood hazard zone, but pretty darn close? They said, absolutely. We will not issue permits when a property is close to the flood zone, but technically out, because we know that water does not read flood maps. So because of that, probably unbeknownst to you, this property is not in a flood zone. And let me just clarify. Let me show you so that you can see. Okay, look at this. A special flood hazard zone? No. Every natural hazard disclosure report will say no, because this property is not technically in the flood zone, but it is pretty darn close. And that is why we have put this disclosure, but is located within 300 feet of the special flood hazard zone. This is something else that we've included. And you probably haven't known that this has all been in your property ID report for like 15 years. XPL. The only reason this property is not in a special flood hazard zone is because it is XPL. What is XPL? XPL means it's not in a flood zone because only it is protected by a levee. So I'm sure you're all way too young to remember this, but one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, Led Zeppelin, had a song. Y'all remember? If it keeps on raining, the levee is going to break. Yes, go listen. It's put on YouTube. It's fabulous. I love that song. Yes. And Led Zeppelin was absolutely right. What did we see all over California? Levees breaking. So if I were the buyer of this property, I would say, okay, wait a minute. So this property is only not in a flood zone because it is protected by a levee, and we know California's levees are all a crumbling cracker mess. They're like crackers melting in the water, right? That's what the levee system is in the state of California. And even though it's not in a flood zone because it's protected by a levee, it's close to the flood zone. So here's what I'm going to do as a buyer. I'm going to get flood insurance because technically I'm not in the flood zone, right? Insurance companies may or may not care about this. It depends on the insurance company, right? How much faith do we have in them right now? I just got my notice of non-renew. Ha. Does anyone know a good insurance agent? I need homeowners. So that is why this disclosure is in, these two disclosures are in the body of the report. And it's very important that, your buyers aren't going to read it. And it's really important that you don't point out things. Don't. Because personally, I don't like landslide zones. I'm terrified of them. Landslides doesn't scare me. You lose square footage. Okay. My husband hates Melrose. He won't pay $1 in Melrose. So if you start telling me about the ground breaks fault that's near my property, I'm going to be like, well, I don't care about that. But you seem to think it's important and you're the expert. So maybe I should be afraid about that, huh? No, right? Every single page is important. Every single page. Let me decide what I don't like, right? So do you guys have any more questions? Did I talk about everything you want me to talk about? You're all so lovely. Thanks for having me. I wish you the best of luck. I encourage you and I welcome you to call me or email me anytime. Please don't call me on your divorces. Thank you.